Welcome back to The Truth About Cancer, a Global Quest. I am so glad that you joined us for this episode. Isn't it insane that people sometimes have to risk going to jail to treat their cancer the way that they see fit? Now, one substance that people do risk going to jail if they are caught in the possession of this substance is hemp, or cannabis, sometimes referred to by the slang term marijuana. It's not commonly known that the hemp plant is not only a medicine, but it's a superfood. And as we're about to hear from Dr. Patrick Quillen, who is the former Vice President of Nutrition for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, he calls it the most useful plant on earth. Talk real quickly, if you will, about the medicinal effects of the hemp plant or the cannabis.
Hemp cannabis is arguably the most useful plant on earth. If you do a history of it, you look at canvas, which is what our ancestors used for the Conestoga wagons and for their clothing. Canvas comes from the word cannabis, because cannabis was the material that they used to make all of their clothing and canvas. It lasts longer than cotton or polyester. If you go back and look at your history, it was around 1937 when DuPont got its patent for polyester, and that was the beginning of the witch hunt to get rid of cannabis because it was competition. You look at, you can use it for paper pulp, for clothing. You can eat it. The food, the seeds are high in omega-3 fats, high in protein. The oils from hemp oil is delicious, nutty tasting, and high in omega-3s. And then there's the medicinal parts, the cannabinoids. There are many studies that have been done. One of them, for instance, the DEA, Department of Drug Enforcement Agency, decided they wanted to prove how unhealthy marijuana was. And so they went to a major researcher at UCLA, University of California at Los Angeles, and said, we want you to prove that smoking marijuana causes lung cancer. He said, shouldn't be a problem. They did a huge study, prospective randomized trial, and he said, not only it doesn't cause it, it actually helps to prevent it. THC has an anti-cancer property. I'm not telling people you should smoke marijuana. I'm telling you that we need to have a rational discussion on marijuana, hemp, cannabis, because there's an abundance of data now that says that it's non-toxic and has therapeutic benefits. The CBD, the cannabinoids, apparently there are cannabinoid receptors in the human body, and it's almost as if nature designed, here's lock and key, and this fits in, and it improves. It's a adaptogen, not unlike ginseng or garlic or substances that just make everything work a little bit better.
We're learning what's known as, what we all have, an endocannabinoid system or endocannabinoid receptors or cannabinoid receptors within the body. There are certain foods that contain these cannabinoids. There are certain abilities to produce some from within as well. But these receptors are present almost everywhere in the body, particularly heavily entrenched in the gastrointestinal system, the liver, the brain, the nervous system, interestingly enough. And what we're finding, the impact of the two key cannabinoids, they're not the only ones, the cannabidiol, which is CBD, the non-psychoactive component it's considered, and the THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol, which you say all so well. And those two aspects, which the THC is considered the psychoactive component, it alters the state of the mind, and that's been argued as the dangerous addictive drug, which now doctors like Sanjay Gupta and others say, well, maybe it's not really that addictive at all. In fact, it might have benefit. And we're finding out in relation to certain cancers, not just one or two, but many cancers, a tremendous benefit. Some to stimulate the apoptosis, right, the cellular death. Others to address protection of cells, neurological cells, brain and nervous system cells from cancer. A lot of epithelial integrity relying upon the impact of these cannabinoids. We talk about gastrointestinal recovery, seizure disorders in children and adults. A lot of it is actually sourced right there in that second brain in the gut. And in these cases, we're seeing the use of CBD, sometimes THC, or both together, are reversing these cancers and reversing even seizure activity, seizure disorders.
So are there studies that have shown that there's effectiveness with the CBD and the THC against cancer?
Oh, an incredible amount. It's almost too much to go through. If we talk about the references that we have here for breast cancer, colorectal cancer, prostate cancer, stomach cancer, skin cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, lung cancer, uterine cancer, thyroid cancer, pancreatic cancer, cervical cancer, mouth cancer, glioma, brain cancer, and biliary tract cancer, biliary. So we've got tremendous amount of scientific research. A 2007 Harvard Medical School study published in Science Daily showed that hemp's THC decreases lung cancer tumors by 50% and it significantly reduces the ability of the cancer to metastasize. I mean, this is huge. Again, this is just one of many things. Here it is, cannabinoids. This is directly from a United States patent. This is the shocker. Cannabinoids, including THC and cannabidiol, promote the reemergence of apoptosis so that tumors will stop dividing and die. This is a profound, now, I'm not one that says there's one panacea that does everything for everyone, but if there was a plant, you know, to look at one plant that does so many extraordinary things, this cannabis plant, which is sometimes wrongly referred to as in marijuana as the slang, or hemp as well, in many forms has so much from a nutritional value, but now we learn more and more about its specific value in reversing cancers that are active, much less in their prevention.
It's not a gateway to more drugs, it's a gateway to health. And I'm not smoking it, I'm not using it. I think it should be legalized and available and taxed and regulated so that we have standardized concentrations of it. If you compare it to the $280 billion a year drug industry, and according to an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association, at least 100,000 Americans die each year from the on-label use of prescription drugs. Find me the deaths from cannabis.
They're not there.
They aren't there.
While we were in London, we also had the privilege of interviewing a gentleman named David Hibbett. Now, in July of 2012, he was diagnosed with stage 3 aggressive bowel cancer. He did a couple of rounds of chemo, and he was told twice that he was cancer-free. And that's where our story picks up. The first time you were told that you were okay, you probably believed it. Second time, were you a little bit more skeptical in light of the fact that it had already returned once?
Yeah, well, I obviously had that in the back of my mind, but I wanted to believe that I would be okay, so I suppose at the time I tried not to think about that too much. Especially just coming over chemotherapy as well, and you know how bad it made me feel. I just wanted, you know, to get better. Christmas was coming up as well, so.
Right. And you're a young man, so how old were you when you were diagnosed?
30. I'm 33 now.
Okay.
But yeah, it was soon after Christmas when it came back again for the third time, again in the lymph nodes. Okay. This time, though, this is when they told me, you know, I was terminal and there's very little they could do. What
kind of an emotional blow was that to hear that after the first two, you know, you go through the 2 rounds of treatments, you're told you're cancer-free twice, and now they say, well, actually, it's terminal.
Can't put it into words. Devastated, completely devastated. I mean, I've got a little boy who was 3 or 4 at the time, and just no, just couldn't accept it from him. I couldn't believe it, but I struggled to see how I was going to get through it after him telling me that. Yeah. Obviously, my family, you know, my mum especially, you know, it's devastating for everyone. It really was.
Where did you go from there?
Well, initially I went with the treatments that they offered me. I went on to the chemotherapy. I did that for 3 months.
Even though they said it was terminal?
Yeah. They told me that this would possibly extend my life. If I didn't have the treatment, they were saying I'd go around about 6 months to live. With the treatment, depending on its success, I could have 18 months. So to me at the time, you know, I thought an extra 12 months with my little boy, I'll do it. 3 months into the chemo, I had another scan. It had been reasonably successful. The tumours had shrunk a bit, but they were still giving me the same prognosis. And it was then, because I'd started to get a lot more sick 3 months into it, it was then I was thinking, you know, I'm not going to last 18 months anyway. My body's telling me, you know, it can't go on no more. And I'd been told about certain alternative treatments by people leading up to this point, but to be honest with you, I didn't actually believe them back then. But it just come to a point where I knew I had to try something, whether I believed it or not, and I looked on the internet and there was one particular thing that kept coming up more than anything, and there seemed to have been a certain amount of research done, maybe not on humans as such, but in a lot of laboratories. So I went ahead with this treatment, and well, it's done really well for me, it really has.
What did you decide to do?
It was cannabis oil.
Okay.
It's extracted from a cannabis plant. It has high THC content. Okay. It's something that I take orally. Just putting a little bit in my mouth, letting it absorb. I took this alongside chemotherapy initially for a couple of months. And it made me feel a hell of a lot better just on the chemotherapy. My hair stopped falling out. The pins and needles that I got from the last chemotherapy, which was told I'd have for the rest of my life, actually have disappeared. And they started to disappear when I started taking this oil. I actually started missing chemotherapy sessions then. I only went once a month for the next couple of months, and then eventually stopped at the beginning of August. I then went on to have further scans, and the fear of it growing or spreading that the doctors thought was going to happen never happened. They've gone on to remove my lymph nodes. Now the measurement when they took the lymph node out is actually a little bit smaller than what it was after I stopped the chemo. And after the operation, I just changed my diet, was very healthy. They couldn't give me radiotherapy because I'd had the legal amounts already. I didn't want the chemotherapy, so I just carried on with the oil and good diet. This time, 3 months on, the scan was clear. That's the first time it's happened for me.
Now here in UK, how do you get hemp oil? Is you have to go to the doctor to get it prescribed, or?
It's actually illegal in the UK.
Is it?
Yeah,
okay.
It's illegal medically, it's illegal recreationally. It's not seen as having any medical use in the UK at the moment.
It's illegal in many states in the United States too.
Yes, I believe it is.
It depends on the state, but many states it's illegal as well.
Yeah, and a lot of other countries it's still illegal as well. So I made some myself by purchasing the cannabis illegally. Right. And I also purchased some of the oil from, I suppose, what you call a local drug dealer.
Isn't it absurd, David, that you have to go to a underground drug dealer to buy a plant that can heal your cancer?
It's crazy, absolutely crazy. I just don't understand it. I really don't. You know, I've gone back to the doctors, I've looked at my records, and they're now actually telling me to continue doing what I'm doing.
They're telling you to continue?
Yeah, but
that's great.
But I've not got it in writing, unfortunately. But if the doctors are willing to say that to me, you know, I can't understand why it's classed as an illegal drug. If, you know, it's being used for medicinal use, it just does not make sense. If you looked at me, you know, 3 months before taking cannabis oil, and then looked at me now, the difference, I look 10 years younger. It's truly amazing. Like my family have commented on it a lot. I personally didn't realise, and then I looked back at photographs and I saw for myself, and you know, I was shocked. I really was. It was crazy. I looked like an old man.
How did you feel after you go through your first scan that's completely clear, you go home and see your boy? I mean, how emotionally contrast that with how you felt before when you had the diagnosis?
Oh man, I don't know.
You can't even describe it.
It's makes me emotional now thinking about it. Honestly, it's after being told that, and then such a short time as well to get told pretty much the exact opposite. It's unreal, and you know, the journey I've gone through as well, and taking the oil, and you know, my friends and family didn't want me to do the oil and stop the chemotherapy.
Right.
You know, nobody wanted me to, because you know, even though we thought it might work, and we all had to hope it might work, nobody knew. So, you know, it's been an emotional roller coaster, and, you know, to get that news, it's just...
I bet it was
It's amazing, yeah, surreal. It's...
Now, your friends and family now...
Oh, yeah. They're all for it now, and, you know, they're backing me to, you know, try and get this available to cancer patients, you know, in this country. I've started off my own little petition. You know, to have it illegal for a cancer patient, you know, it's just absolutely crazy. And if you want to try it, you know, if you should be allowed to. And you know, I've even spoke to the police, and I won't say the police person's name, but they says to me, you know, if it's for medicinal reasons, they don't want to arrest anyone for it. Why would they? The high is a side effect, so you know, if you're not taking it to get high, if you're taking it to make them feel a little bit better. Like I say, how can you arrest someone for that? Right. I was told I was terminal, and now I'm told I'm not. So, you know, there is hope there. It's not just me as well, there's plenty of other people that have come through it. Yeah, most definitely. And if I can, well, they can too. Well, these stories really give you hope, don't they? Now, one of the things, well, actually a couple things that David was not able to share with us because they hadn't happened yet was, number one, he recently had another scan, and he was told that he's cancer-free. So that's 2 scans that he's gotten, and he's completely cancer-free. And then, probably even more exciting to David at this point, is just a couple months ago in August of 2015, he got married. Think about how ironic this is. Hemp is natural, and it heals cancer. Chemotherapy is synthetic and artificial, and oftentimes, it kills the cancer patient. It reminds me of a quote
from Sir Albert Howard.
Sir Albert Howard said, and he's of course the godfather of modern scientific aerobic composting, and in his iconic book, An Agricultural Testament, 1943, he said when we feed the soil with artificials, that's what he called chemical fertilizer, artificials. He said when we feed the soil with artificials, it creates artificial plants, which make artificial animals, which make artificial people who can only be kept alive with artificials. If you eat things you can pronounce, and you eat things, the plants and animals, from sources that honor the distinctives, the glory of those beings, the chances are it will honor your place and your glory as well.
If you walk into a grocery store, 90% of the groceries in the grocery store are toxic and they'll cause cancer. 90%. You know what? If it's not from a farmer, it's not worth eating.
Well, what's your take on the ketogenic diet and cancer?
Well, I believe it has great value, and in my view, should be seriously considered as an adjunctive therapy in the treatment of most malignancies. And you might say, why? Because of the basic understanding that we have of the physiology of cancer cells. And Otto Warburg was awarded a Nobel Prize, I believe in the 30s, for the understanding that the primary fuel for cancer cells is glucose or sugar. And our cells, our non-cancer cells, have the ability to use glucose or fat. Those are the two primary fuels. And cancer cells seem to have lost this ability. So when the unfortunate challenge in contemporary Western countries is that most of us are not very well adapted to burning fat effectively, and this is an artifact of the way we eat and the timing of the food that we eat. Primarily it's both. Many people don't understand the timing, but I'll talk about the timing in a moment. So the problem is that we eat regularly, pretty much 3 meals a day, and then snacks in between, and about the only time we aren't eating is when we're sleeping. Right. So our body can store sugar as glycogen in our muscles and our liver, and we have about 12-hour supply, some people less, some people a little bit more, but in that range, not a very long supply, where our fat stores can last us for months. So if we're given sugar all the time and we have that fuel available, then there's really limited reason for our body to have the ability to burn fat. So it suppresses those abilities, those enzymes, and then we just eventually forget how to burn fat efficiently or effectively. So when we shift our diet primarily through restricting processed foods, and especially processed sugars, and change the timing of the food, so we have these regular periods where we're not eating for a while, something called intermittent fasting, then we upregulate those enzymes that burn fat, and then we can really shift away from having high levels of sugar in our blood, which also has the additional benefit of improving insulin resistance. And insulin resistance many experts believe, may be at the core of many of these degenerative diseases and many malignancies. So it's really a challenge to treat a cancer if you have high insulin resistance. And so how do you know if you have insulin resistance? Well, typically, clinically, if you're overweight, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or if you're taking a statin drug, that's a good suggestion, or high blood pressure.
And how many, that's like 70% of people.
Well, it's about 70-80%. And the other way to know for sure, objectively, is to draw fasting blood insulin, not blood sugar, but blood insulin level. If that's below 3, then you're fine. If it's above 4 or 5, then you probably have it, and the higher it is, the worse it is. So, simple test to do, very inexpensive, available at any commercial lab across the world. And to me, it should be the standard of care in the treatment of anyone with a malignancy, to understand what your fasting insulin level is and to control that. Because if your fasting insulin level is low, then that's going to be highly correlated with your body's ability to effectively metabolize fat as a primary fuel. And that's what you want, to be able to have, that metabolic flexibility, to be able to burn fat or sugar, not just be able to rely on sugar. And because that's going to potentially and more than likely feed into the growth and the acceleration of the malignant cells. There are a number of good studies that show it's quite effective for treating certain types of malignancies, specifically brain cancers. But probably generally useful for most malignancies. But the typical strategy one would do, I think, is to really focus on the quality of the food and the timing of the food. Okay. So I like to call it the 3-8-3. So that is basically don't eat for at least 3 hours before you go to bed. Okay. Sleep for 8 hours, because sleep is another crucial component for healing. And if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, your body's immune system is not going to be optimized to fight these malignancies. So when you produce energy in your body, it doesn't occur there magically. There's this process that occurs, and you take these substrates, the fuels that are broken down to either the carbohydrates or the fats, and it combines it with the oxygen. And there's usually like when you're burning any fuel for energy, there's a byproduct, right? There's waste products. When you're converting hydrogen to fuel, that's a pretty innocuous byproduct. Right. But in our own mitochondria, they produce. You have the potential to produce excessive electrons, and when you do that, your body has to compensate for that with antioxidants. And if you're using the energy, then it's no problem, because you generate it, you use it, and it flows, and there's very little excess waste products. But when you don't, you don't use the energy, if you're not being able to burn fat, and you have a lot of sugar that you're building up, then you have this excess energy. And then these electrons build up. It causes massive amounts of free radicals, which can damage your tissues, your cell membranes, your DNA, can actually prematurely kill your mitochondria, and certainly prematurely age you. There are many experts who believe in the mitochondrial theory of aging. So we want to preserve the function and the health of our mitochondria. One of the best ways you can do this is by simple strategies like delaying the time or not eating before you go to bed. Simple concept, right? But we didn't know that, if you eat right before you bed, it's one of the worst things you can do, because you have all this excess energy that's generating. You don't need energy when you're sleeping. That's when you recover and repair. Your body has more than enough fuel to compensate for that. When you have extra and surplus energy going around, you actually cause free radical damage.
Dr. Mercola is explaining the value of the ketogenic diet coupled with intermittent fasting. Now, again, the ketogenic diet is very high in fats, moderate protein, and very few carbs. But not all fats are created equal. We must have high-quality fats. But what exactly are high-quality fats?
High-quality fats, such in examples would be avocados, coconut oil, grass-fed, pastured organic butter, ideally raw, olives. Nuts would be another good source, and you want to be careful to have relatively low protein nuts, so macadamia and pecans would be the two best, because they're high in the fat and very low in the protein. Olive oil would work too. You want to be careful of avoiding other oils, the omega-6 oils, the processed oils, the industrialized oils.
All the vegetable oils that people think are healthy because it says vegetable.
Oh yeah, that is absolutely the worst, because the other factor that's a variable that's really important in the treatment of cancer is something called the omega-6 to the omega-3 ratio, omega-3 being the good fats, of course, like fish oil and ALA from flaxseed and chia seeds. These are the beneficial ones, and normally that ratio should be anywhere from 1 to 1 to 5 to 1. The problem is when you have a processed food diet, which is loaded with these omega-6 industrialized oils, that ratio can go to 20 to 1 to 50 to 1. Literally 75 to 100 times what it was last century. Around 1900. And all because of this industrialization process to allow the opportunity to have access to this food. You could not create that food prior to that time. This is really an artifact of modern industry.
Yeah, the technology wasn't even in place.
It did not exist.
Eliminate things like omega-6 fats, which are cancer fuels. Corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, canola oil. They all oxidize, they're all powerful inflammatories, and they promote cancer growth. And that's been proven. It's all through the literature. They make cancer grow faster.
So omega-6 oils actually make cancer grow faster. Please think twice before you buy another gallon of vegetable oil. Dr. Mercola shared the value of intermittent fasting, but what about fasting in general? Here's Dr. Boris Greenblatt from Russia.
So, Boris, talk about the importance of fasting, that fasting might play in overcoming cancer, because it's very popular in the United States, and I know in Russia you mentioned that fasting is done as well.
Yes, it's popular in Russia. It doesn't take much money. Cancer cells, they differ from regular cells. And we can play on those differences. And one of the differences, they don't take as well heat as normal cells. And they cannot survive without food for them, which is usually mostly glucose. So in fasting, they suffer more than normal cells. Even for normal cells, it's even good. They kind of detoxify themselves, so nothing bad happening to them. But cancer cells, they die. So that's the reason why it's good. So it's plus for normal cells, and it's minus for cancer cells.
So the fasting eliminates the food for the cancer cells, but you also mentioned they don't respond well to heat, so hyperthermia.
Absolutely. In Russia, what they do, it's famous Russian banya or sauna. So, or in clinics, it's hypothermia. So you can do it double whammy. You can do fast, and then you can do this hypothermia in Russian banya. So you can use this normal physiological difference of cancer cells and kill them with heat and with fasting.
Speaking of fasting, someone recently told me that the only way they could afford to be healthy was to fast, since they couldn't afford to buy organic food. This seems extreme. Is it true?
One of the things that I hear a lot is, I can't afford to eat organic food. I know I should, but I can't afford it. So what's your response to someone that says that?
Sure. Well, there are several answers. One is that if you buy in volume, you can save a lot of money. So so get a freezer, all right. And I mean we're in the animal business, so I'm thinking frozen beef and chicken and whatever. But you can get a huge price break if you buy in volume. Number two, look in the mirror and ask yourself, is there anything that I'm buying that I don't need? And whenever anybody says that, I want to grab them and say, okay, take me to your house, and here's what we're not going to find, I'm sure, at your house. We're not going to find soda. We're not going to find lottery tickets. We're not going to find $100 designer jeans with holes already in the knees. Coffee, alcohol, Hot Pockets, frozen microwavable dinners, French fries. All right, I mean, you can go down the list, okay? And the truth is, there aren't very many households that don't have those things in them. And none of that is actual nutrition. None of it. I went to New York City's Union Square Green Market, arguably the most expensive farmer's market in the world. And I asked my hostess, I said, could you take me to the most expensive potato in the New York City Union Square Green Market? She said, yes, I know just the guy. So she elbows her way through, and we go up and we get to this potato guy. And he's got, about 30 potatoes out there. There's red ones and white ones and blue ones and green ones and orange ones and fat ones and long ones and skinny ones and all this stuff. And so I look through all the little boxes there, and I find the most expensive one. It's an heirloom Peruvian blue fingerling potato, and it's $1.99 a pound. But that whole market is surrounded by supermarkets with 100 feet of fluorescent lighted, handicapped accessed retail floor space selling French fries and potato chips for $3 a pound.
Yeah.
In some cases, organically produced produce will have 100 times higher polyphenols. So when you look at the ultimate price you're paying, maybe it's 50% more for organic, but you're getting 100 times more value as an anti-cancer nutrient, it's clearly a better value. Especially since when you price cancer, you're talking about $1 million, right, and financial bankruptcy, not to mention all of the suffering that it causes.
And Sayer's right, folks. These conventional treatments, they do create a lot of suffering. And nobody wants to see a cancer patient suffer. I can't imagine what it would be like to witness the suffering day in and day out, but many of the practitioners that we interviewed, that's exactly what they do. They've dedicated their lives to helping to alleviate this suffering. And we got insight into one of those doctors when we were in Mexico, Dr. Patrick Vickers. And in this next clip, he shares with us some heartfelt emotions about this suffering and helping cancer patients.
People come into our clinic for 3 weeks and they live with us. And we bond with them and they bond with us. And then they go home and they continue their therapy at home. And so, when you're dealing with that kind of, I don't know what you would call it gravity. That kind of gravity, the perspective on life as you and I know it changes. And, life, we live our lives a lot of the time to satisfy ourselves and be entertained. But when this is happening in front of you, things tend to take on a more serious nature. And I think that's how it's changed me the most, is I don't really live anymore to please myself. I live to save these people's lives, and my staff live to save these people's lives. It's an incredible responsibility, first of all. Like I said, they're coming to us as a last resort, as the last resort of hope to save their lives. And so when I hear the children, what really touches us the most is when we have these young couples come in and they have children. And, you know, they'll have 2, 4, 6-year-old children. The ones you saw were 13, 15, 17, and 18. But Katrina, who is also there with us, she's got a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, I think an 8-year-old. And you know, I mean, when you consider the fact and the gravity of what happens if they don't make it, and who are they going to leave behind, it just makes our job that much more important and that much more vital, you know, to their story. And it's a deep burden for us. We don't take these things lightly. We know what's going on behind the scenes in their life. We know what they're fighting for and what they're living for, and it just takes on that added burden to what we're doing. And quite frankly, you do feel a heavy weight on your shoulders. Not to feel like a martyr or anything. That's not what we do. You know, I mean, that's not how we feel. But it's a sincere burden that we feel when we know, especially when there's children involved, like you experienced. Because, like I said, those children, they know what's going on, and they don't want to lose their parents. Every day. Every day. Every day I feel that burden. But you can't walk away, because nobody in the world knows what we know. And to walk away from that would be walking away from your Creator, which is what you were intended to do.
My family and I went to Peru last summer on a family trip. I'm originally from Peru, so is my husband, and it was the first time that we were taking the kids. And the first place that we stopped was up North Peru, to visit my dad, and he insisted that I would go and see a doctor because I usually have this tendency to break out, and he said, let's go and see a dermatologist up there. And so I did, and so she recommended for me to see an endocrinologist. And so the doctor there checked me completely, and she said, I feel a lump on your neck. And she sent me for an ultrasound, and it was really funny that the radiologist is the one that did the ultrasound. It's not a technician like in the US. So when he was doing the test, the scan, he was really freaked out. He was afraid. And I knew something was wrong then. I walked away from the office, and I decided to put it on hold because we were there for 3 weeks. I came back to the US, and I had a biopsy, and it turned out to be thyroid cancer. The word cancer is usually tied into death, you know, pain, brokenness, oppression. I knew right away that was not me. That's not where God wanted me. And that's why He led me to find it. And, you know, from then on, I don't even know how to call it intuition. I knew I did not want to do anything conventional. Although I didn't know that this whole new world of holistic existed. You know, I didn't know you could cure cancer with non-toxic treatments. But I was, you know, it was the beginning of this new journey of discovery. And that's how it all started. I was told that I needed surgery right away, radiation, and I said no. And it's not that I was afraid, I just knew that it wasn't for me. That's not the path for me to heal. As you see the ocean right here, if we allowed our emotions to lead us in our healing path, we're gonna be going back like the waves, back and forth, right? I don't wanna be like the waves back and forth. I want to be still and continue taking one step at a time into my healing, towards my healing journey, which is my ultimate goal. So when I was first diagnosed, the doctor couldn't tell me whether or not after surgery cancer could come back. So I chose to follow this non-toxic treatment approach, and it was pretty scary because again, you're going against the flow. Everyone around you tells you you're crazy. But that was what I decided to do, and I've never done anything like this. I didn't know what to expect, but even the doctors don't know what to expect. They don't know, they can't tell you, there are no guarantees. But I chose this path for me, and it has worked. It's working. So the tumor has shrunk dramatically, and my lab work reflects that the tumor markers have decreased approximately 65% in the past 5 months, which is amazing. And it will continue. It will continue to decrease until it's gone.
Wow, what an episode we had for you today. Now, this was a bit of a roller coaster, I know, but I also know that you've gained a lot of insights through the topics covered and through the incredible experiences of our experts. How amazing it is that the small things in life really mean the most. Perhaps many people are unsuccessful in treating their cancer because they are looking in the wrong places. For instance, nutrients are perceived as small things when in reality they are of paramount importance. And speaking of small, micronutrients are some of the smallest things, but it's these micronutrients that are some of the biggest allies in winning the battle against cancer. You've seen that micronutrients actually aid the body in stopping tumor formation, angiogenesis, which is the formation of new blood supply, metastasis, proliferation and invasion of cancer, and they even induce apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. You've learned that rather than perceiving cannabis as the devil's weed, maybe we should think of it as heavenly hemp due to its plethora of medicinal uses, and that it's best understood as a friend rather than a foe when it comes to cancer treatment. You've again seen the devastating reality of the brave heroes that have undergone heartache and loss, sacrificing their own personal assets and security for the sake of their patients' lives. Missing peptides like antineoplastones have successfully been used to heal a multitude of so-called terminal cancer patients. And finally, you've seen that no matter what your background or family lineage, you are not destined to end up with the same disease as your parents. You've seen that the science of epigenetics proves you have the ability to choose your own path and cultivate your own health and healing irrespective of your genetic predisposition. We have good news for you in this moment. You are free, and the prison of death and disease is behind you. You and your loved ones are free to step outside the cancer box, which is full of lies and confusion, into a beautiful world which beckons you with all the things you desire and deserve. Wow, we covered a lot of ground in this episode, but we know from experience in our last documentary, the next episode, the final episode, is going to be the most inspiring, and it's going to give you hope. Why? Because the next episode is totally dedicated to sharing cancer conqueror stories, and that's what you're going to get. So thanks for joining us, and I know we're going to see you again tomorrow. Have a great evening. God bless all of you.
This is why this is important, that this series that you're doing, Ty, is being kept alive, and I just can encourage everyone who's seeing that show that you spread it and help Ty to get his message around the world and not only tame this beast, but eliminate it, not by violence, but by education.
I really respect what Ty Bollinger does, because after experiencing this pain, after going through all this suffering by losing loved ones, he has this courage and strength to stand up and talk to so many people around the world, and learning by himself, because every time he interviews someone, it's a additional knowledge for him how to help his family and loved ones and everybody who can listen this beautiful series. So that's why we have to do this. We don't have to sit in our small offices just helping one by one patients. This is great, but if we have the opportunity to educate millions, when we have the opportunity to stand up without any fear that someone will be jealous or someone will say that no, that's not what medical school teaches, that's not what pharmaceutical company wants you to know. If we have this strength, if we have this willpower to empower everyone and courage to spread this message, I think this is very, very important. I think that everyone who has something to say to help others is supposed to stand up and say it. Some opinions can be, not acceptable by people, but it's good to know. It's good to know. That's why we send patients after our scan for other opinions. Don't trust only us. Educate yourself. We want you to go to another doctor and listen what that doctor will say to you, and third doctor and fourth doctor, and then combine that knowledge together. Then go to social media, watch this series, and make your choice, because this is your body, this is your health, and this is your life.
The global quest is saving lives. What Ty has done is something that no many others have attempted so far, making sure that the truth is out there, the truth is available. There's a lot still to be learned, to be explored, but by and large, by giving some tools, and educational tools, some motivational tools to people, the fear factor all of a sudden goes. And if the fear is out of the way, well, there's a lot of room for a true quest and a true recovery and a true healing. So my advice is, don't hesitate to own the series. It can absolutely save your lives, save the lives of your loved ones, save the lives of somebody you know. Like I said before, 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with cancer or has already been diagnosed with cancer. So it makes a lot of sense to own the series. Have a look, take a look, you'll be very amazed, very impressed.
When you choose to own The Truth About Cancer, A Global Quest, you play a huge role in saving millions of men, women, and children that are suffering and dying from cancer, a terribly misunderstood and mistreated disease. Your support allows us to continue on our life's mission to eradicate cancer once and for all. Our mission is not only to help you and your family by arming you with the truth, but it's to share the truth with as many people as we can across the globe each and every day. Please consider joining this movement and supporting the mission by choosing to own this docuseries and by sharing it with your family, your friends, your community, and your church. Together, we can make a difference and we will save lives. Plus, a portion of each and every sale gets donated to cancer charities that are doing real cancer research and are actually helping cancer patients each and every day. Simply click the banners below to join the movement and support our mission. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.